Hello and welcome everyone to this video. And today we're going to discuss the reading approach under the principles and theories of language acquisition and learning. In this 15 minutes video presentation, we will going to tackle what a word approach means, why reading is important in language acquisition, the brief history of reading approach, theory of language, different approaches to teaching reading, the different types of teaching and learning activities, and the extensive and intensive reading. After this video presentation, if you have clarification or comments or feedback related to this topic, please do comment below. Approaches describes the nature of the subject matter to be taught. It means as a teacher, you're going to establish the background or the overview of your topic that you're going to discuss. Approach is a set of correlative assumptions based on nature of language teaching and language learning. The lesson that you're going to teach is composed of different subtopics, and it is a dynamic process that every student should know. Approach is axiomatic. It must be stated clearly what to do or what the student should comply. Approach is not practical because it needs a lot of effective ways and strategies how the particular lesson should be taught successfully. Why reading is important in language acquisition. Reading offers students a wide range of vocabulary and grammar. It essentially supports and feeds the brain with the correct language structures. As learning is facilitated by visual cues, reading helps the brain to remember these language structures as the learner will connect an image to the word it represents. Reading improves and develops your communication skills. It helps you learn how to use your language creatively. Reading is important because it is an active skill which involves inferencing, guessing, and predicting. According to Stephen Krashen, during his seminar in the University of Georgia College of Education with his topic, The Power of Reading, he said, in order for us to be literate in different area of our lives, reading is the key. Different knowledge around the world we can get through reading. And according to him, for a teacher to become their lives easy, reading is the answer. Through reading, our behavior really change. Reading approach brief history. Reading approach or reading method was first devised for English learners in India and French or German learners in the United States of America. It has been advocated in England for pupils of inferior language learning ability. Reading approach is like GMT or grammar translation method. Only the grammar necessary for reading comprehension and fluency is taught. Most children who learned to read during the 19th century are taught from either Noah Webster Blue Back Speller or from the famous McGaffey readers. McGaffey was explicit in his direction to his teachers. They could use his primer with what he called the word method or top-down, the phonic method or the bottom-up, or a combination of the two methods. Reading approach theory of language. Reading approach is a way to start teaching beginning readers. And the three main theories are the traditional theory, the cognitive view, and the metacognitive view. The traditional theory or bottom-up processing which focus on the printed form of a text, and the cognitive view or top-down processing enhance the role of background knowledge in addition to what happened on the printed page. And the metacognitive view which is based on the control and manipulation that a reader can have on the act of comprehending a text. and thus emphasizes the involvement of the reader's thinking about what he is doing while reading. Different approaches to teaching reading. The first one is a phonic approach, and it tries to create an association in the child's minds between the graphemes or the written symbols and phonemes, the sounds of language. It is through the use of repetitious exercises to drill this link between text and sound. The teachers aim to build a familiarity and comfort with the basic building blocks of written text. And phonics approach described as a bottom-up approach which builds towards comprehension through a journey from the smallest elements of written text. Once the child has achieved this proficiency, the teachers then encourage them to blend the individual written elements together to produce whole new words. And the other one is the whole language approach. And it focuses on comprehension from the outset, with children being given continuous text to read in order to build an understanding of vocabulary and meaning. These texts will be short, often with words being repeated to help develop familiarity with certain key terms and concepts. And whole language approach identified as a top-down approach which places less emphasis on the rules and minutes of language. A teacher will initially read with the children but will gradually say less to encourage more independence on the part of the young learners, placing trust in children's ability to build association between words and draw conclusion from the text. Reading approach, types of teaching and learning activities. The first one is skimming. It is an activity to read shorter text to extract accurate, detailed information. People often skim when they have lots of material to read in a limited amount of time. And skimming used to quickly identify the main ideas of a text, done at a speed 3 to 4 times faster than normal reading. This technique is useful when the students are seeking specific information rather than reading for comprehension. And it works well to find dates, names, and places. There are many strategies that can be used when skimming. Some students read the first and last paragraph using headings, summarizes, and other organizers as they more move down the page or screen. Next is scanning. It is a technique that often used when looking up a word in the telephone book or dictionary, and it involves moving eyes quickly down the page seeking specific words and phrases. It is a quickly reading text to get the gist of it. And scanning also used when the reader first finds a resource to determine whether it will answer the questions. The students look for the author's use of organizers such as numbers, letters, steps, or the words first, second, or next. Once we scan the document, we might go back and skim it. In scanning, we are looking for words that are boldface, italics, or in a different font size, style, or color. Extensive and intensive reading. Extensive reading or voluntary reading. A reading longer text, usually for pleasure. Extensive reading is an approach to language learning, including foreign language learning by the means of a large amount of reading. Extensive reading is the free reading of books and other written materials that is not too difficult nor too easy. Extensive reading will help the students to motivate them and enjoy reading and learning independently. Here, the students view and review of unknown words in specific contexts, and it will allow the student to infer the word's meaning and thus to learn unknown words. The role of extensive reading in language learning. It can provide comprehensible input. It can enhance learners' general language competence. It increases the student's exposure to the language. It can increase knowledge of vocabulary. It can lead to improvement in writing, and it can motivate learners to read. It can consolidate previously learned language. It helps to build confidence with extended text. It encourages the exploitation of textual redundancy. And last, it facilitates the development of prediction skills. Intensive reading. It is a quickly going through a text to find a particular piece of information. It is essentially reading in depth and is usually done in the class with each student have the same text. And intensive reading involves students reading in detail with specific learning aims and tasks. The intensive reading technique is reading for a high degree of comprehension and retention over a long period of time. Actually, it can be compared with extensive reading, which involves student reading text for enjoyment and to develop general reading skills. Intensive reading kinds of instructional experiences and materials. Reading aloud. Teacher is a model in reading process and student listen and respond to the teacher. Teachers should select stories, poems, and informational texts to read aloud that help expand and strengthen the background knowledge of the students. The purpose is to stretch students beyond the reading levels, particularly in content areas under study, expand vocabulary, and develop concept, and also to expose students to varied forms of text like fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. Shared reading. Teacher leads and students participate. The teacher read a text while the student observe and follows along silently. This method helps build reading fluency and comprehension. This is extremely valuable for the child who is having trouble figuring out what reading is all about. And the purpose of shared reading is to teach concepts about print and print conventions, and also to teach comprehension and interpretation. Third is word study, and it fosters recognition of the individual sounds of words and an understanding of the alphabetic principle and its application to read and spelling. Here, the activities involve phonemic awareness, phonics, structural analysis, and the development of sight vocabulary. The purpose of word study is to provide systematic, focused instruction at the word level and also to provide additional support for who need it. And guided reading. Teachers monitors for application of strategies as students reads with the assistance of an instructor as it is needed. Here, when an unfamiliar word appears, the instructor either tells the students the word or assists the student in decoding word. During the story, the teacher stops at certain points and questions the student in order to determine or guide comprehension. Here, the purpose is to provide instruction as close as possible to students. Instructional levels while gradually increasing the difficulty of the material. And last, the independent reading. is as important for low-achieving children as for any others. Independent reading is what struggling readers most need to practice. Teacher can assist them in finding appropriate books by giving them tips on how to select books on their own. Here, the struggling readers should be encouraged to select books that match their interests and reading abilities. And in addition, struggling readers develop fluency automatically and confidence from frequent intensive. And that's it. Hope you learned something here today. Thank you and goodbye.